Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome to IndieCast 40. I'm Javardhan Singh, your favorite host, and this is Rajvardhan Singh, your second favorite host. And we would like to congratulate you all that we have turned 1 year old, and this is episode number 40. And we've also done 5 guest features, and I've also uploaded one independent video which was about Holi. So I'm also going to upload part 2 for that as we approach Holi. So, Raj, why don't you introduce this conversation?
It's been a lot of work for 45-ish episodes, a lot of hard work for guest features and our own features, decent amount of research.
Yeah.
So, continuing that trajectory, let's speak about what is the issue on everybody's mind right now. The weird fiasco that took place in the Oval Office in the United States. I'm sure you have seen many reports on it. I'm sure you have seen many memes on it, as have all of us. So let's get your take on it, Jay. I think before you start, there's lots to criticize all three persons acting there, which is the US president, US vice president, and the Ukrainian president. I feel like this is the most undiplomatic any public political figure, any world leader has been on the screen ever in recorded human history. This is
Let's
the most undiplomatic recorded,
let's get
evidence
it
that
out
we
there.
have.
Let's get it out there. Like one fact that needs to go out there is that Zelensky was a very famous Ukrainian comedian before he joined politics, so he had a reasonable experience with respect to how media and entertainment works. Donald Trump himself was quite big in the reality TV, circles. So from that perspective, I feel, they both knew what they were doing. They were both very well aware of the market that they were trying to go after,
Even
because they knew that stuff like this actually resonates a lot when it comes to generating a buzz. Oh, look at this, the president acting so unprofessional. Oh, look at Zelensky, taking up a stance. But let's not forget, both these people have reasonable amounts of history in the entertainment industry, so we cannot count that out. That's my perspective.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I would just like to add that. Let me just eat the.
मेरे को भी देना boba tea, boba coffee.
I would just like to add
It's
that
nice boba.
JD Vance himself was sort of, when he was a senator, he was growing a lot in the media space. He has a lot of experience doing podcasts and being on platforms. So it's not like even the US vice president shies away from media spectacles. Couple of weeks back, he was at the Munich Security Council where he basically gave a huge dressing down to European security elites and the transatlantic alliances have come under threat from all of that, because a lot of it was also JD Vance trying to make an impact by the speech, grab attention and say to Europe that this is not how we do business anymore. There is going to be a shift in US policy. We do not see Russia as a threat, and I feel like what happened in Oval Office is just a continuation of the stance that JD Vance had exerted at the Munich Security Council. Now, I feel like Donald Trump and JD Vance did bully Zelensky in the Oval Office, but I have a controversial take, which is that I feel like the provocation came slightly from Zelensky's part too, because from the initial parts of the meeting, and I hope I don't get cancelled for saying this, but from the initial parts of the meeting, Donald Trump was fairly amicable. He was fairly pleasant. He, in fact, spoke positively about NATO. He was not totally against the idea of giving security guarantees to Ukraine. At some point, Zelensky said something to the extent of the US has a huge big ocean away from the continent, so they don't have to worry about the Russian security threats as it is, which you could see a shift in Trump's attitude right after that. Now, JD Vance also went down to lecturing the president, the Ukrainian president, a little bit. And I think diplomatically, the Ukrainian president should have let it pass. He shouldn't have done the "can I ask you a question" part of sort of thing, which is where it really went into the debate mode. This is post this, both Trump and Vance shed away all diplomacy. Like, it's ironic that JD Vance started by saying that the answer to the end of conflict isn't diplomacy, then proceeded to do the most undiplomatic thing a US vice
Have
president
you
has
ever
done.
said thank you? Have you even said thank you once?
Yeah, so I
Shut,
mean, I feel
shut up.
like I feel like Zelensky could have gone without provoking them, and Trump and Vance. There's been enough criticism as
यार
to what they
पता है
did.
भाई, I'm so sorry but I disagree. I don't think Zelensky provoked Trump. We all know what a pro Putin stance Trump has always had. I mean, since the beginning, it was pretty obvious that Trump was in the pro-Putin camp. There has been a lot of accusation against the Russian intelligence agencies interfering in the 2016 elections with bots and all these other fake accounts on Twitter. In fact, I was listening to John Bolton, who he's John Bolton, right?
Yes, US
The
national,
national
ex-US
security. He was
national
under the
security
Trump
advisor. Yeah.
government. What a guy! You
He
should
had a very public fallout with
yes,
Trump.
but you should listen to Mr. John Bolton. He's amazing, and he's
Trump supporters will cancel you for saying that.
yeah, but he was a Republican, if I'm not wrong. Was he a
Yeah,
Republican? He was on the conservative side, but he's extremely critical of Trump. And John Bolton said that back in 2019 when Zelensky took power in Ukraine, even then Trump was extremely dismissive of the guy. So automatically Zelensky was pushed towards the Biden side, and I think what JD Vance also pointed out in this diplomatic meeting was the fact that Zelensky was apparently quote unquote campaigning for the Biden presidency, which is also what really rubbed the Trump camp the wrong way, and it is that which made them extremely angry on the edge. It's like high school kids fighting.
One of those things that you have to do is that you have
Sorry.
to realize the dignity of the office, right?
Yeah.
I might even agree with Donald Trump and JD Vance, but the way you have to communicate to the leader of another country, no matter how powerful they are, is with a certain regard. I feel like this is where Trump lost out when he started saying things like, "You don't have the cards." I'm sorry, that's not the way you speak to the president of another country, even if they are dependent on you to some extent, which Zelensky very much realizes. He's gone back and said that he's willing to apologize to
Yeah, and
Trump for what's happened.
we're very
Uh,
thankful for the American
yeah,
government for all the
and you
stuff
know
that they've
one
done
thing
for us.
one thing that I really disliked about the way Trump treated Zelensky was that he kept calling Joe Biden stupid. Even if you're a president of a country which may not have the cards, in Donald Trump's words, or may not be as powerful, you still don't get to treat a head of state in such an undignified manner, which is, I feel like, what the US president and the vice president did wrong. It was not fitting for the dignity of the office of the White House. And I feel like that was one way that, you know, uh, came across in really bad taste, even to the people who are conventionally Trump or Vance supporters. Like, I am one of the people who hasn't minded JD Vance's opinions. I actually liked his speech at the Munich Security Council conference. So why do you want to lose supporters or people who hear you out by having such irrational outbursts? I also agree that Zelensky has been fairly imprudent over his entire tenure. I feel like Zelensky too had a lot of areas where he got extremely dependent on Western financing and Western tech and Western weaponry to keep indefinitely fighting Russia, which is not a sustainable solution, and to the discredit of the security elite of NATO and Western Europe, they almost shut down any solutions which required peace or negotiation with Russia. So this is where I understand Trump and Vance, that how long can you continue the war without any solution, without any negotiation? Tens of thousands of young men have died. So there has to be some diplomacy. That's where, to their credit, they at least tried to start dialogue, Trump and Vance. But this is not the way to do it. You can't be asking a president of another country, why aren't you wearing a suit and things like that.
There's
There is a
also
conduct.
there's also the strong speculation that there was supposed to be a deal with respect to minerals that was supposed to be signed. So there is a lot of money that has to be made, and that money cannot be made without a ceasefire. And if you listen to a lot of Republican rhetoric, a lot of people are saying that, oh, it's gonna get so difficult to do business with Zelensky, as if everything for this capitalist driven society is about making money, exploiting resources. So I feel there is also this imperialist agenda that is behind US's intentions, because what it has done essentially is that it has isolated a lot of its European partners, and it has somehow weirdly made Turkey change its stance with respect to Ukraine, because till now it was playing both sides. It was saying that we respect the Russians, but also providing drones and all types of military weaponry to the Ukrainians, and also keeping a good face in front of Putin, ensuring that Finland and Norway, if I'm not wrong, don't get NATO membership. And so basically Turkey was playing both sides. But recently Turkey has gone on to say that they support Ukraine to the extent that they want old Ukraine borders to be reestablished. That means most of the Ukrainian territory coming back to Ukraine, including Crimea. So that is a major shift in
Yeah.
the position of Turkey, and I'll tell you why. Because after the United States of America, it is Turkey which contributes the highest number of soldiers in the NATO, and it is also push of Turkey towards finally getting that lucrative European Union membership. And by playing this Russia Ukraine card, it is reminding the West in its total that we can actually make a difference if you take us seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's a valid point. Speaking of shifts in policy, like you mentioned, Turkey, I keep circling back to the United States because United States is somehow geographically distant, yet the most crucial actor or the crucial stakeholder in this entire situation. Even Zelensky recognizes that if the dying and the killing and the wars have to stop, it is going to be Donald Trump, who's one of the people who will play a key role in that. I feel like the major shifts in U.S. policy that have come in are the great European isolationism that has come into their vocabulary now. So now in official documents, the U.S. will always look at, in the new administration, the U.S. will not use the word Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is crucial. They will say the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So there's a shift in policy on that note. There's also acknowledgement that it will be very difficult for Ukraine to regain the territories that are now in Russian control. So there's possibly an acknowledgement for Russian control of the areas of eastern Ukraine, which is about 20% of Ukrainian territory. So it's significant amounts of land which is in Russian control now. So these two things, which was unimaginable in the Biden administration, have happened in the Trump administration by official policy. So that's how willing Donald Trump is to cut a deal and become peacemaker in the Ukrainian Russia Ukraine conflict. I honestly think it's justified, but I have very little stakes in this because I'm sitting here in South Asia, very distant from all of this. But to depart from this part of the discussion, where my brother just made a valid point a few seconds back, was that Ukraine does actually have a lot of rare earth minerals also. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of European actors and American actors also try to extract wealth from Ukraine in this process. And I say European factors intentionally because now Europeans have been trying to become autonomous of American security guarantees. Now, this will see more importance being given to Germany and France over the next
Even the
few
UK.
years. Yeah, Germany, France, and UK are the only powers in the EU who can realistically, hypothetically stand up to Russia if they have to, right? So now they will have excessive military expenditure in the next few quarters in their economy. They will do military build-ups. Keir Starmer's gone as far as saying that I'm ready to put UK troops on the ground
Yeah.
if I have to. So that's the new official position in Europe, which is a little bit more hawkish because they are not relying on US support anymore. But for that, they will need funding, which will also not be American. Part of the reason, sorry, I'm cutting you off. Part of the reason, hold on to your thought. Part of the reason why JD Vance was so frustrated at the Munich Security Council was conference, all was also because that it was all US money that was funneled to keep this war going. And Zelensky's entitlement felt like the Americans would just keep having to send that money to the Ukrainians without an end to the war. And this met the frustration of the incumbent US president. Even Joe Biden had thought Zelensky was very entitled when he met him. So the part of the thankfulness question that came up in front of the media, I don't like the way JD Vance said it, but I think he kind of had a point that this is American tax dollars being spent to do this defense. So you can't keep opening the tap of American money to sustain this war, which is not ending. Ukraine is losing men. Ukraine is losing territory. There has to be some point where you realistically need to put an end to this. So that's
Yeah, not to mention that, on the back of this war, you and your wife are getting photo shoots done on like mainstream American magazines. That really put me off, and I thought that what was the point of that? If you're
this is in
fighting
no
such
way
a
a justification
yeah.
for Trump, by the way.
Of
But
course, of course. But if you're fighting such a serious war, what was the need to be on the Vogue magazine? Was it the Vogue? If I'm not, it was the Vogue.
something like that.
Something like that. So, yeah, and let's not forget that Zelensky also has the backing of one of the biggest Ukrainian oligarchs. So, a TV mogul, mind you. So it's not like it's all roses on the side of the Ukrainians as well. It's like everyone's trying to make money out of this conflict, and who are dying? It's young men, people, people who are younger than Raj and I, or a lot of people who are as old as us, and yeah, and they're dying for what? Like for absolutely nothing, because there's so much cultural similarities between Ukraine and Russia. They literally had the same church,
Yeah.
and it's like Russia and Ukraine going to war is so absurd. It's like UP and Bihar someday decide to go to
Yeah.
war. It's like that.
I have another hot take on this.
Mhm.
You know, you had the US State Department and the Oval Office be very diplomatic and very polite throughout the last few years, but the war was ongoing. So you have to decide whether you prefer a distasteful engagement on television that aims to end a war, or do you like polite and dishonest diplomacy which keeps the wars going? I
Yeah,
feel like if the young men have to stop dying at the cost of people being less diplomatic on TV for a few seconds, it works for me.
fair enough.
You know, I feel a lot for the Ukrainians also. They have lost territory. A lot of young Ukrainian men have died. I'm sure a lot of young Russian men are facing tragedies. There are also in the Russia-Ukrainian sort of border areas, there are a lot of interlinkages within families. So there are reports of people fighting, like for example, somebody from their in-laws side is fighting on the side of the Ukrainians. So you have to imagine it from this, that this is not a very pleasant position to be in. From it was wrong of Zelensky to bring out a history lesson like that, but the history lesson is an important one nonetheless, that since 2014 people have been cracking down on fierce opponents of the Russian occupation in areas like Crimea, and that's something that has really pushed a lot of supporters of Ukraine in the back, and a lot of international attention had been withdrawn from what was ongoing in Ukraine till Russia finally announced
Invaded
its
in
operations
2020.
in 2022. So the Ukrainians have been misled. The Russians have been provoked. I don't think they are mutually exclusive. Russians were provoked.
Of course.
Ukraine was expanding NATO was expanding eastwards. So there's got to be like a balancing
So
act.
to counter that, a lot of people would say that in 2008 there was a lot of talk about Ukraine and Georgia being included in the sphere of NATO as well. Of course, around that time Russia did invade Georgia, but why didn't they do the same thing with Ukraine around the same
Yeah.
time? Maybe they were, building up arsenal and preparing themselves for the main goal, and that happened after the Maidan protests in
Yeah.
2014,
I,
13, 14.
I feel like eastward expansionism of NATO was a post Soviet Union idea of the US to do near world domination, because now that the Soviet Union was gone, you keep including more and more members into the NATO. But what the US didn't realize earlier, but what the US very well realizes now, is that it's a multipolar world. They were a unipolar world even in the post 9/11 era. The US could invade Iraq without any criticism. It did that. They didn't let anyone stop them. But now, even the US doesn't want to be that interventionist anymore. Its own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, announced that in his own like official statements that US supremacy has waned a little bit. They obviously want to be an international regional actor, but they don't want to do this world domination.
US right now is in a very critical stage. It's like how Great Britain was in 1945. after the Second World War. I feel that's where US has reached
Well,
now.
I feel that's an odd comparison.
No, it's not an odd comparison. I think both the powers were waning, both the powers were losing their control and grips over their great empires, and they were facing a lot of instability at home with respect to the politics. Of course, they did not disintegrate in their core areas, but their world domination definitely waned. Coming to your point with respect to United States trying to withdraw itself from Europe, there were a lot of rumors of the Kosovo forces from the NATO, which is the KFOR troops, being withdrawn, specifically the US contingent, which contributes around 600 soldiers from Kosovo. There were a lot of rumors around that. But the government in Kosovo came out and said that there are baseless rumors, you cannot corroborate that. But it somehow, points to a direction as to how much of, of hesitance that's coming in American foreign policy with respect to intervention and presence in all these, former communist slash Soviet satellite states in Eastern and Southern Europe, and that's what's making a lot of, regional dominant ethnic groups like the Serbs and the Russians. Of course, they've been doing it. Gain a lot of confidence again. There was a lot of rhetoric in Serbia that they'll invade Kosovo, they'll take over the Republika Srpska of Bosnia Herzegovina, just by this one rumor that the KFOR troops are going out and the Americans are gonna, are not gonna be part of the eastward expansion anymore. So I think
That's
Raj,
an interesting take.
yeah, this
You know,
is where do you want to take this conversation?
Yeah, I
now?
mean, I'm just I have one last point remaining. This point is not original. It came to my head because today the print re-uploaded an old video of Shekhar Gupta, which is from the very week that the Russian invasion started in 2022, and it's about how the Ukrainians became pushovers after letting go of their nuclear weapons, which is that now your sovereignty and your nuclear weapons possession are so closely like related that if you want to remain truly sovereign, having nuclear weapons, armaments, and the capability to deliver payloads that are nuclear in nature should be large. Why does the world, after all, take the US, China, and Russia very seriously? It's because of heavy military industrial infrastructure, and let's acknowledge that. Even India, in a sense, in South Asia, is considered a very powerful force
Even Pakistan.
because Pakistan's nuclear supply is still like always circumspect, but India is a reliable nuclear
Yeah.
power. We are largely members of all respectable nuclear forums. So the one good thing about India is that we didn't let ourselves get deterred from the path of building up nuclear weapons. In an ideal world, no one should have nuclear weapons. But in a world where your sovereignty is important to you, nuclear weapons are so
Yeah,
key
man.
because a journalist in the Oval Office will never ask the head of state of a nuclear powered country, why aren't you wearing a suit? You know how they say billionaires don't have a dress code? You can be a billionaire and wear whatever
Yeah,
the hell
look
you
at what
want.
Elon Musk does, man. All
Yeah.
these Republicans and
Yeah.
right wing Americans, they'll never say a bad word about Elon Musk, but he
So
literally carries a chainsaw, bro. What the
yeah.
hell?
So if you keep your nuclear capabilities intact, the international diplomatic forums, they will take you a lot more seriously, and you will have that much more bargaining power. I mean, look at how Russia would have dealt with Ukraine. The territorial disputes might have been a lot more restrained had nuclear capabilities not been given up by Ukraine. And this is where I feel bad for the state of Ukraine. I don't feel bad for Zelensky as much as I feel bad for the state of Ukraine that they gave up nuclear weapons in exchange for security which they never got. That's the key principle.
Yeah,
And
so
that is one negotiating point that Zelensky also doesn't want to
Russians
go
said
back.
that we are not going to attack you at all. We're not going to take over you. Just give us your nuclear weapons. No
Yeah.
problems. That was the
Yeah,
background.
and they got no security guarantee. They are looking for a security guarantee to this day, which they are not getting. So that is a fair position on the part of the
But
Ukrainians.
the Ukrainians also said that they're not going to join any of these American-led, security treaties, And the fact that they wanted to go towards EU during the Maidan protests, the whole dispute that happened between Viktor Yanukovych and then later Petro Poroshenko. So it somehow kind of feels that Ukraine essentially became a proxy between the Russians and
Yeah,
the
I
West.
mean that's exactly right. No, so if you want to maintain your diplomatic and regional sovereignty, nuclear weapons do become important.
Absolutely.
It's like carrying a 9 mm in a bad neighborhood. You need to have one.
It's like
Otherwise,
carrying illegal weapons in Bihar.
I mean, fair, yeah.
Mm, fair
So
enough.
I think that's like our take on this whole like Ukraine,
Yeah,
Zelensky, Putin, JD Vance fiasco. There will obviously be more to add to this. Let's try to get. Jay, I've been thinking a guest feacher on foreign policy also.
definitely.
We
High
haven't done
time.
that yet. That would
High
be
time.
interesting. And yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And Shabba Khair. Good night. Shubratri. Love you guys. Mwah.
Jai Mata Di.